My neighbor kept stealing my assigned parking spot. I blocked him in the day of his can't-miss court hearing. It got way pettier and bigger than planned. Hey Reddit. Long-time lurker, first-time poster, etc. I, 29M, live in a mid-sized apartment complex with enough quirks to qualify as a personality test. Thin walls that let you learn way too much about your neighbor's sleep schedules, a laundry room that eats socks like it's unionized, and an HOA board that thinks conflict resolution means taping a passive-aggressive flyer to every door. I'm going to sound petty. That's the point of the sub, right? But just so you don't think I'm an unhinged villain twirling a mustache over assigned parking stalls, let me provide receipts. Our complex has two parking realities. Assigned, numbered spaces that come with your lease. Each one bedroom gets one, two bedrooms get two. Mine is number 27, right by the back stairwell. It's close enough that I can carry groceries without performing CrossFit. Visitor/overflow lot along the fence, first come first serve. It's farther away and sloped like a budget ski hill. On weekends, it fills up because we're near a strip of restaurants that pretend our lot is their valet overflow. The lease is explicit. Park in your assigned spot. Don't park in someone else's, and towing will be at violator's expense. Signs everywhere. Bold text. Underlined. With a doodle of Satan holding jumper cables. The whole 9 yards. I've lived here for 3 years and never once had an issue. Until March, when apartment 3B got a new tenant, whom I'll call Brent. He is the kind of guy who wears cologne as a personality, says boss to the barista, and carries his gym water bottle like a trophy. His energy is, I take conference calls in open concept restaurants. He moved in with a girlfriend, later upgraded to X, with remarkable speed. He also moved in with a black Mercedes that costs more than my student loans and common sense combined. On day 2 of Brent's tenancy, I came home from work. I do IT support for a logistics company. Yes, you can reboot a forklift computer, and found my spot, number 27, occupied by said Mercedes. Initially, I went full, oh shoot, maybe he misread the paint, and left a polite note under the windshield. Hey, this is assigned. Number 27 is mine, app 2C. Yours might be number 29 or number 31. Thanks. He texted the number I'd included, my mistake. I thought human decency liked direct lines, with, my girl's in my other spot. I'll move it later. I waited 40 minutes. Nothing. I parked in overflow and hauled groceries like a pack mule in sleet. Later that night, like 11:50 p.m., I heard tires and looked out the blinds. He'd moved the car. I didn't think much of it. Until day 3, when I came back at 6 p.m. and found him in my spot again. This time, I knocked on 3B. He opened holding a protein shaker and the aura of a man who thinks unassigned parking is socialism. Hey, number 27 is mine, I said. Just want to make sure we're sorted. Yeah, boss, I'll be just a minute. Could you move now? I have groceries, and it's sleeting. He gave me the type of nod people give their fitness trackers. 2 minutes. 10 minutes later, he strolled out, eyes on his phone, moved the car like it was a favor, and gave me a thumbs up that did ambitious work for a single finger. If this were a one-off, I wouldn't be here. But it became a pattern. The times changed, but the behavior didn't. Sometimes he'd take number 27 just for a sec, sometimes overnight. Sometimes he'd park there because someone was in my other one. Sometimes because I'm unloading. The excuses were the same length as the time it took him to care. I tried every polite option first. Notes, friendly firm, per lease you can be towed, clip art of a tow truck with a smile. Texts, always met with on my way boss, which I think is legally non-binding. In-person conversations, usually interrupted by his Apple Watch rewarding him for achieving 100% audacity. I looped in property management. Our manager, Dana, is a harried saint who wears a lanyard and the tired smile of someone who has seen a Roomba in a fountain. She left official warnings on his door and claimed she'd documented violations. Towing is in the lease, yes, but our building contracts with a tow company that only operates for tenants calling on non-tenant violators. For tenant-on-tenant crime, they require a management sign-off, which Dana is reluctant to authorize unless it's egregious, because some previous tenant apparently called in tows like they were pizza deliveries. So, for weeks, we played parking chicken. If I got home before 5:30 p.m., I usually beat him. If I was late or did a grocery run, boom, Mercedes squatting in number 27, like a smug cat on a warm laptop. The straw for me wasn't even the parking. It was the tone. Brent has that incurable breezy entitlement of a man who confuses convenience with right. If he'd apologized sincerely even once, or proposed a schedule, or offered to swap spots, we could have solved this like neighbors in a Coke commercial. Instead, I became the guy dragging laundry across the lot, while a luxury car warmed my paint numbers. I started documenting. Dates, times, photos. If petty revenge had a routine, mine became the parking paparazzi. I snapped his license plate in number 27, the timestamp on my phone, a quick selfie with my confused face for future flair. Not because I planned some Machiavellian court case. I'm not that guy, but because some people only respect paper. And if I eventually needed to tug management's sleeve harder, I wanted my ducks in a row, laminated. I even tried a neighborly block tactic. Our hallway group chat. Yes, we have one. Yes, it's mostly memes about the garbage chute. Includes me, the couple in 2A, teachers with a plant jungle, a nurse in 2B who works nights, and an older guy in 3A who owns 17 Hawaiian shirts and a mysterious parrot. We had all noticed Brent's vibes. Loud Bluetooth calls on the stairs, too many packages, and not enough recycling. I dropped a polite PSA. Friendly reminder, assigned parking is assigned. If your spot is blocked, let Dana know. Within an hour, Brent posted in the chat, parking is first come first serve on weekends. Everyone knows that. Everyone does not, in fact, know that. Dana chimed in the next morning with the official lease screenshot. Brent left the group. Cool, mature response. Since you're here for the petty, here's a small appetizer that didn't quite satisfy. One night, after he'd parked in number 27 again, on a Thursday, I parked directly behind him, not blocking him in, but at an angle that made it irritating for him to maneuver out. I left a note on his windshield that said, I'm thrilled to provide valet-adjacent inconvenience for your convenience. Please enjoy this sample. With a QR code, I printed that linked to the lease section about assigned parking. He must have moved the car around 1 a.m., because I woke to his muffled cursing drifting up through the air vent like a lullaby. I went to work feeling like a raccoon that stole one grape. The high was minimal and not scalable. Here's where the story shifts from mildly annoying parking drama to the universe offered me a petty layup. One Tuesday in late April, I'm carrying a load of clean laundry, socks present and accounted for, and I pass Brent on the stairs. He's wearing a suit. Like, an actual suit. Not his usual. I work from anywhere with Wi-Fi and a power outlet alpha hoodie. He's on a call, voice at the volume where everyone becomes a coworker. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m., I can't be late. No, listen, I can't be late. The judge will. I said I can't be late. I do not try to eavesdrop. The stairs have the acoustic privacy of a tin can, and judge is not a word you hear in our building unless someone is rating banana bread. I file it under not my business and move on. But the information lodged in my brain like a toy in a vent. 8 a.m. Tomorrow, can't be late, judge. That night, at 6:15 p.m., I return from the gym. This is not bragging. I go because my lower back makes noises like a haunted accordion. And, say it with me, my spot is occupied. The Mercedes sits there preening. Overflow is full. I circle once. Twice. I end up on the street, half a block down, under a street lamp that flickers like it's trying out for a horror movie. I text Brent, you're in number 27 again. Please move it. Need to unload. He replies, on a call. I'll move it later. 10 minutes. 20. I start a timer out of sheer curiosity. At 45 minutes, I'm done. I haul my stuff in from the street. When I pass his door, he's laughing loudly about something crushing the deck. Cool. I don't sleep well when I'm annoyed, which my therapist says is my nervous system's creative approach to problem solving. Translation: I pace and write emails in my head. Around 1 a.m., I'm awake playing Tetris with what I know. Tomorrow, Brent can't be late. He parked in my spot again after weeks of requests, warnings, group chat drama, and lease screenshots. Management has documented it, but is slow to enforce it. I'm not going nuclear. I still don't plan to tell. But I have a spine, and it's decided to clock in. Petty revenge is best served lukewarm and technically defensible. So I write 2 physical notes, because paper lives longer than texts. Note A, for my dashboard, parking in my assigned stall, number 27. Neighbor in number 27 has parked in my stall multiple times. Management is aware and has documented. I will be back by 10 a.m. Note B, for his windshield. If needed, you parked in my assigned spot again. I parked behind you. Management has warned you. I'll be back by 10. I set my phone alarm for 5:45 a.m., which is a time I usually recognize only from the tail end of insomnia. I tell myself I'm being ridiculous. I also set a backup alarm labeled Petty Alarm. Do not oversleep. Now, before the parking law enthusiasts arrive, our lot has 2 lanes and a one-way flow. If you park directly behind someone in their stall, you can theoretically block them from reversing out. But you can also park in the lane parallel to the stalls, still within the striped lot, hazard lights on, and basically turn the aisle into a temporary loading lane which everyone uses for a few minutes at a time. The difference is time and intent. I technically intended to be back by 10 a.m. My company had a no-camera morning server patching, and I planned to be remote. My laptop is, blessedly, portable. Also, my friend Matt lives a 10-minute walk away, and if an asteroid hit our building, he'd let me camp in his living room and borrow his Wi-Fi. Important later. I emailed Dana at 6 a.m. Hi. Wanted to formally document that 3B continues to park in my assigned spot, number 27. I've included photos from the last 3 weeks. Today I am going to park behind the car since I need to use my assigned spot and have work. This isn't my preferred solution, but the informal methods have failed. I'll be back by 10 a.m. If there's a better solution you can implement today, I'm open. Attached, 12 photos, dates, times, and 2 previous warning notes she'd left on his door. She'd CC'd me before. I was careful to be polite and factual because I've learned property managers respond best to here's the pattern, here's the impact, here's the action I'm taking that stays within the lines. At 6:20 a.m., I went down. The lot was quiet, sky pre-dawn gray that makes everything look like it's cosplaying a detective show. The Mercedes sat smug in number 27. I pulled my ancient Civic into the aisle directly behind his stall, angled just enough that even if he did an 84-point turn, he'd need divine intervention or a forklift. I slid note A on my dashboard. Took photos of the scene from multiple angles like a junior CSI. Then I walked the 10 minutes to Matt's place with my backpack, a thermos, and the adrenalized calm of someone who's about to be both right and annoying. At 7:10 a.m., I got the first text from Brent. Dude, move your car. At 7:11 a.m., another. I'm in a hurry. At 7:12 a.m., I have court. So now it was officially court, not just judge. Noted. I replied at 7:14 a.m. You've parked in my assigned spot repeatedly despite warnings. I'll be back by 10 a.m., as noted on my dashboard. Please plan accordingly. He called. I let it go to voicemail. He texted again. This is illegal. I'm calling a tow. I texted back. I've emailed management documenting your repeated violations. You are in my assigned stall. I'm parked in the lane temporarily and will be back by 10. Was I splitting hairs about temporarily? Was I also sitting at Matt's kitchen table with my laptop and a perfect view of my phone lighting up like a disco? Absolutely. At 7:20 a.m., Dana replied to my email. Received. Thank you for the documentation. We are escalating this to formal lease enforcement. Please share any further developments today. I will be on site after 9 a.m. I screenshotted her reply and sent it to Brent. FYI. He wrote, you have no idea what you're messing with. Which is always comforting. By 7:30 a.m., the building started waking up. Our night shift nurse in 2B, I'll call her Sam, texted me privately. Is that you blocking 3B? Because if so, I would like to subscribe to your newsletter. She'd had her own run-ins with him coming home to find her assigned spot poached after a 12-hour shift. She once parked on the street at 3 a.m. and had to walk past a raccoon that looked like it paid rent. The couple in 2A, teachers, plant parents, saints, dropped a laughing emoji and then followed with, we love democracy. 3A, the Hawaiian shirt guy, sent a photo of the view from his balcony. Brent pacing around his car, gesturing like he was trying to flag down an aircraft. The group chat lit up with popcorn gifs. I did not participate. I was not about to get Twitch streamer energy in a building-wide thread. At 7:35 a.m., my phone rang with an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail again, and a minute later I got a transcription from Citywide Tow and Recovery. We received a request to tow a vehicle blocking a tenant. Please call to confirm details. I called them back because I'm not trying to get my car towed in my own lot. The dispatcher said they'd been called by a tenant in 3B reporting a blocked vehicle. I calmly explained, I'm the assigned tenant for the stall he's in. He's repeatedly parked in my spot against the lease. Management has documented violations and is on site after 9 a.m. I am not authorizing a tow. If you tow any car, it should be the one in stall 27. Dispatch got frosty. We need management authorization for tenant-on-tenant tows. Perfect, I said. They'll be on site after 9. It was 7:40 a.m. Brent texted, You're insane. I texted, You'll want to leave earlier next time. Now, I know exactly how this sounds. But please appreciate, if I had done this on a random Wednesday when he had no plans, he would have learned nothing besides sometimes there's a speed bump. The man told the stairwell he couldn't be late for court. He had one job. Don't park in the one spot that belongs to the person who now knows your court time, actions, consequences, etc. Because Reddit will ask. I didn't know why Brent had court at this point, beyond judge, and can't be late. Plenty of reasons exist that aren't dramatic. Traffic ticket, landlord dispute, whatever. But his energy was urgent in a way that felt non-trivial. I didn't care. His emergency was not a free pass to break the lease he'd been breaking with a smile for weeks. And again, if he had been even slightly respectful earlier, we'd be in a different story. At 7:50 a.m., he came to Matt's building. I know because Matt's ring cam caught him buzzing random units. I did not answer. I'm petty, not suicidal. At 7:56 a.m., he texted, I'm calling the cops. I said, okay, I'll be back by 10. I called Dana to give her a heads up that law enforcement might get invited to the world's dullest improv show. She sighed, a deep, managerial sigh, and said, I'm leaving early. This has gone on long enough. I went to refill my coffee. My hands were shaking with adrenaline, and also because Matt's French press is apparently a medieval device. My phone buzzed again. A new number, short voicemail. Then another text from Brent. You just ruined my life. I did not reply to that one. It felt heavy. I reminded myself, he could Uber. He could call a friend. He could have not parked in my spot. All of the above could be true simultaneously. At 8:10 a.m., I walked back toward the building. Not to move the car. I said 10 a.m. and meant it, but because I didn't want to be the guy who fled the scene. Also, I'm nosy. As I turned the corner, I saw a patrol car idling by the curb and 2 officers near the lobby door. Brent was outside, mid-rant, gesturing toward the lot like it had insulted his mother. I stayed on the sidewalk like a good little citizen and waited until an officer made eye contact. Then I raised a hand and said, Morning. I'm 2C. We went through the script, assigned spots, repeated violations, warnings, documentation, management email, my plan to move by 10 a.m. I was respectful. They were polite. One officer went to look at my car and took a photo of the note A on my dashboard. The other flipped through my phone with the text thread and Dana's email. Brent tried to interject. The officer held up a hand without even looking at him. Reader, I felt seen. Officer, so you're the tenant for spot 27. Me, yes. Officer, and you emailed management at 6 this morning to document this plan? Me, yes. Officer, okay. We're not a towing service, and this is a civil matter between tenants and management. We can't compel a tow without property owner authorization. You said you'll be back by 10. Me, correct. Officer, to Brent, you can make other arrangements for your appointment. Brent's face did Olympic gymnastics. It's court, he said, like that changed physics. It's custody court. Do you understand? And that was the first time the words slotted together, custody court. The suit. The urgency. The reckless entitlement. My stomach did something complicated. The officer kept a neutral face that deserves an award. We understand you have somewhere to be. You also have multiple documented warnings about parking violations. We suggest you call a ride. Brent sputtered about his lawyer, and the judge won't accept Zoom, which, I'll be honest, is a wild sentence in 2025, but who knows? The officer shrugged in the highly trained way of someone who will not be dragged into your life choices. At 8:18 a.m., Brent finally pulled out his phone and called a ride. The ETA said 8 minutes. He paced. He swore quietly. He looked at me with a cocktail of rage and despair I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, which he technically was, by seat proximity. I did not gloat. I also did not apologize. My heart was doing double time, and not in a triumphant way. The officers left after reminding both of us to work with management. Great advice. Never would have thought of that. The rideshare pulled up at 8:27 a.m. Brent dove and like it was a lifeboat. The car peeled out. I stood there in the new quiet, my Civic doing its best impression of a barricade, the Mercedes still sitting in my spot like evidence. Sam from 2B passed me on her way in, scrubs, ponytail, dead-eyed night shift humor, and gave me a low 5. For the record, she said, I don't feel bad. He wouldn't feel bad for us. I nodded, but I did feel something weird, a mix of vindication, nervousness, and the slow dawning sense that this situation had just gotten more complicated than either of us planned. Cue doomy foreshadowing music. Before anyone asks. No, I didn't move the car out of kindness after he called the rideshare. If the point is to establish a boundary, you can't dissolve it because someone had to face the consequences this one time. Also, I didn't trust that if I moved, he wouldn't just pull his car back into my stall the minute he returned out of spite. I gave a time, I stuck to it. Adults are allowed to maintain consistent boundaries, even when emotions ramp. At 9:05 a.m., Dana arrived. Clipboard, lanyard, purposeful walk. She took in the scene in one glance and said, "Thank you for the email." Then she taped a formal notice, like, formal, to 3BS door, lease violation, final warning. She took photos of everything like she was assembling a scrapbook from hell. I'm authorizing a tow for his car the next time he parks in your stall, she said to me, matter of fact. No more warnings. I appreciate it, I said, and meant it. Also, she added, lower voice, he's been difficult in other ways. She didn't elaborate, because managers are discreet like therapists, but with more cocking guns. Document everything. Email me, not texts. Paper trail. I moved my car at 9:58 a.m. I know because I wanted to land it precisely. I pulled into number 27, which felt like reclaiming a homeland, and exhaled so hard I reset my diaphragm. The lot was calm. The morning had happened. I made lunch, answered tickets, rebooted metaphorical forklifts, and tried not to think about custody court echoing around the hollow of my skull. A few hours later, at 1:12 p.m., Brent's Mercedes was gone. Either girlfriend/ex moved it, or he returned and immediately fled with it, unsure if I'd apparate into the lot like the parking phantom. The group chat was quiet. No one wanted to poke the bear or look like we were choreographing. At 3:46 p.m., a message popped up from Brent. He had rejoined the group chat like a comet. It said, "To the person who blocked me in this morning, I hope you're happy. I missed my hearing. You have no idea what you've done." He followed it with a wall of text about custody, documented pattern, lawyer, contempt, emergency motion, words ricocheting into one another. The paragraph had the coherence of a QAnon thread. Dana intervened immediately. 3B, per your lease, please take this to email. The group chat is not for personal disputes. A final warning notice has been issued regarding your parking violations. Further violations will result in towing and possible lease termination. He left the group chat again. And that's where part 1 ends. Me sitting in my now secure little rectangle of asphalt, a stack of documented evidence, a manager finally engaged, a neighbor burning up like a star, and a single, tiny, petty action, blocking a chronic spot stealer for 2 hours on the worst morning of his month, that I thought would be the end of the story. But as you probably guessed from the title, and from the cheerful little phrase, custody court, it was only the beginning. For about 5 glorious days, I thought that was the end of it. No Mercedes in my stall, no on my way boss texts, no late-night thuds of subwoofers vibrating through drywall. Brent's door stayed closed except for a few Amazon deliveries. I parked, slept, worked, and existed like a normal adult who didn't have to keep photographic evidence of his own parking space. Even Dana seemed relieved. She sent a short follow-up. 3B has been warned. Let's hope compliance continues. Hope, as always, is the first casualty in apartment living. By the following Thursday, I came home from work to find a different car in number 27. Not the Mercedes, something smaller, older, silver, with paper dealer plates. For a second I thought, great, now random strangers are using my stall too? But when I looked closer, I noticed the same parking pass dangling from the rearview mirror, 3B. Brent had apparently decided to play technically new car to dodge the violation like a toddler hiding behind a lamp. I texted Dana a photo. New car, same issue. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Understood. I've contacted him directly. If it's still there by morning, I'm authorizing a tow. It was gone by 10 p.m. I didn't see it again for 3 days. Sunday afternoon, I get an email from Dana with a polite subject line. Tenant complaint, 3B versus 2C. Inside was a scanned, handwritten letter that looked like it had been scribbled during a caffeine seizure. Tenant of 2C maliciously and intentionally blocked my car on April 18th, causing me to miss a critical court hearing. I suffered personal and financial damages due to his deliberate obstruction. I request reimbursement for lost wages and legal consequences and disciplinary action for harassment. Attached were blurry phone photos of my Civic sitting behind his Mercedes, timestamps circled in red, and an impressive paragraph of capital letters about emotional distress. Dana's comment beneath it. Please provide your written response for our records. I will be forwarding both accounts to corporate compliance. Corporate compliance. The phrase alone smelled like paperwork and coffee breath. I took a breath, then wrote my reply like I was drafting a closing statement on Law and Order. Parking unit. As previously documented, Tenant 3B repeatedly parked in my assigned stall, number 27, despite multiple warnings and management notices. On April 18th, after more than 5 documented violations, I temporarily parked behind his vehicle from 6:20 a.m. to 10 a.m., as noted to management via email before the fact. At no point did I block emergency access or disregard management policy. Tenant 3B was informed of my return time and chose not to arrange alternative transportation. I do not accept responsibility for his missed appointment. I attached every photo, text, and email in one PDF named evidence_27.pdf. I CC'd Dana, because of course I did. 2 hours later, she replied, "Received. Thank you for the thorough documentation. Corporate will review and determine next steps." And that was that, or so I thought. When someone like Brent loses control, they don't reflect. They retaliate. Over the next week, a few things started happening. Z-Notation Spot anonymous noise complaints suddenly appeared in the building portal against my unit. Loud music after midnight. I go to bed at 11. The only thing loud after midnight in 2C is my fridge cycling. Z-Notation Spot someone smeared a thin line of what looked suspiciously like mustard along my driver's side door handle. Not damaging, just gross. Z-Notation Spot one morning my windshield wipers were sticking straight up, arms crossed angry, like 2 little middle fingers. Nothing big enough to prove, but enough to know who had time and motivation. I stayed calm. Documented everything. Didn't engage. The petty part of me was itching for round 2, but the adult part said, wait. Paper cuts hurt more when they come from management stationery. 10 days after the blocking incident, I got a call from a number labeled Corporate Residential LLC. A woman named Janet introduced herself as a regional resident relations specialist. She'd reviewed both statements and my documentation. Her tone was brisk, but not hostile. "Mr. Green, your correspondence was thorough. For record purposes, we'd like to confirm that you did notify the property manager before blocking the vehicle?" "Yes, at 6:03 a.m. email timestamped. Temporary obstruction permitted for maintenance or management-approved reasons. Your written notice counts as prior authorization." She paused, and I swear I could hear the smile in her voice when she said, "Frankly, Mr. Green, that's the most comprehensive tenant log I've seen in months. Vindication tastes like black coffee and PDFs." She thanked me, said they'd be taking appropriate steps with 3B, and that I wouldn't be contacted again unless further evidence was required. 2 days later, I got an email from Dana. 3B has received a notice of lease probation for multiple violations. Any further incidents will result in termination. I almost framed it. You'd think that would be the natural conclusion. But apparently, fate likes sequels. That Saturday night, I came home late from a friend's birthday dinner, close to midnight. As I pulled into the lot, my headlights swept over an oddly familiar shape parked halfway across 2 stalls, one of which was, you guessed it, #27. The Mercedes was back, front tire just kissing the painted line like it owned the place. I parked across the aisle, turned off the engine, and just sat there, hands on the wheel, listening to that quiet tick-tick of cooling metal. I wasn't angry this time. I was tired. A calm, cold, kind of tired, the kind that precedes paperwork. I took the photos, sent them to Dana with the subject line, "Per your authorization." No words, just attachments. 10 minutes later, she replied, "Tow authorized. Vendor has been notified." At 12:34 a.m., the tow truck rolled in, an orange-vested angel humming classic rock. The driver, Gus, stepped out and squinted at the Mercedes. "Been waiting to get this one," he said. "Guy's mouthier than my ex-brother-in-law." He hooked it in under 5 minutes flat. Watching 4,000 pounds of entitlement get gently winched away under fluorescent lights might be the single most satisfying visual of my adult life. He handed me a carbon copy of the tow slip. In case he asks, I slept like a baby that night. At 7 a.m., I woke to pounding on my door. 3 short knocks, then one long one. The rhythm of someone who's already mad. I looked through the peephole. Brent. Sweats, flip-flops, messy hair, face red enough to match the stop sign outside. I didn't open. Just said through the door, "Management authorized the tow." "Talk to Dana." He yelled a string of things that started with "you think you're clever" and ended with "lawyer." I didn't catch the middle parts, but the walls did. Then came the best line. "Do you know what you've done? They impounded my car, and the judge already thinks I'm unreliable." I almost felt bad. Almost. He stomped off. 20 minutes later, I saw him through the window, pacing while on his phone. Eventually, a friend in a pickup came to drive him somewhere. By noon, a fresh email from Dana. 3BS vehicle was towed last night after continued noncompliance. He has been issued an eviction notice effective 30 days. My coffee tasted particularly rich that morning. 2 weeks later, a certified envelope showed up at my door. Inside, an official letter from Brent's attorney, or at least someone pretending to be. It was 1 page, mostly bluff, demanding I reimburse client for tow and impound fees totaling $623 or face small claims litigation. It included a bold line about intentional interference with civil obligations, custody proceedings. I forwarded it to Dana and Janet with 1 sentence. "Do I need to respond, or does corporate want to frame this too?" Janet wrote back within the hour. "Please forward any legal correspondence to our counsel. You are not to engage directly. Thank you for your continued cooperation." That was corporate speak for sit back and enjoy the show. A few days later, Sam from Tubi caught me in the hallway. "You hear what happened with Brent?" she whispered, like we were gossiping about royalty. "No, what now?" I blinked. "You're kidding." She shrugged. "My friend works in the clerk's office." Small world. That was heavier than I'd bargained for. I didn't celebrate. Not this time. Petty revenge is supposed to sting, not implode someone's life. But at the same time, he'd been warned, repeatedly, in writing, with photos. Actions, consequences, parking spaces. Still, it sat weirdly in my chest. For the next month, the complex returned to peace. Brent's blinds stayed closed. The Mercedes disappeared permanently. Sometimes I'd see moving boxes stacked inside when I walked past. On his last day, a moving truck blocked half the lane, and for poetic symmetry, I parked behind it. Not enough to trap them, just enough to make a point. He didn't look at me when he left. Dana waved from the curb like she was blessing a departing storm. The next morning, she taped a new sign on the bulletin board. "Please remember, assigned parking spaces are enforceable and monitored." Underneath, someone had written in Sharpie, "Thanks to C. Redheart." You know that feeling after you've stood up for yourself? The calm satisfaction mixed with the tiniest buzz of anxiety? That was me for a couple of weeks after Brent's eviction notice. I figured, that's it. Guy moves out, life goes on. My parking spot is free, my conscience is, mostly, clear, and the apartment complex resumes its natural state of mild dysfunction. But karma wasn't done driving yet. It was a Tuesday morning when I got a knock from a man in a collared shirt holding a clipboard. He introduced himself as Mark Davis, City Parking and Code Enforcement. "You the tenant in 2C? Yeah, what's up?" He explained that a formal complaint had been filed alleging I was obstructing egress and emergency access in a shared residential lot. Guess who filed it? I laughed, actually laughed. "You mean the guy who got evicted for parking violations?" Mark's expression stayed neutral. "All I know is we received a report with photos. But I also see your property managers attached a rebuttal. Looks like you're cleared." He showed me his clipboard. There it was. My email chain, photos, timestamps, Dana's signature, The whole saga condensed into bureaucratic poetry. We just have to close it out officially, he said. So, any issues with him since? He's gone. He turned to leave, then paused. Between you and me, this happens more than you think. Guy gets towed, gets mad, calls us to report something, and it ends up backfiring. You handled it right. Then he smiled. The small, tired kind only city workers and teachers can pull off, and left. So I thought that was the end. Again, I really need to stop thinking that. 2 weeks later, I ran into Dana by the mailboxes. She looked exhausted but amused. So, funny thing, she said. Remember how corporate compliance got involved because of Brent's complaint? Yeah, how could I forget? 2 addresses on some paperwork. One here, one in another complex across town. Lease violation, possible fraud. Triggered an internal audit. I blinked. You're telling me my parking drama started an audit? She smirked. An accidental audit, yes. And corporate discovered he'd been subletting this unit's parking passes to non-tenants. $50 a month, cash. Let that sink in. All those random cars I thought were visitors or friends. Nope. Brent had been running an underground parking hustle. Dana said corporate found Venmo transactions, text messages, even a Craigslist post offering secure parking near downtown. He'd been collecting rent for asphalt that wasn't his. He's looking at fines, she added, and possible legal action for fraudulent subletting. I stood there, dumbfounded, clutching my junk mail. My petty little act of blocking him and had indirectly opened a trapdoor beneath his side hustle. I didn't know whether to feel victorious or like I'd accidentally summoned karma with a Ouija board. A week later, Dana invited me to the next tenant association meeting. For context, she said. Normally those meetings are 6 people and a cheese tray, but that night the community room was packed. Apparently the gossip had spread. A resident caught violating parking rules, found subletting spaces, got evicted, and was now facing fraud claims. Dana went through the incident calmly, anonymized of course, but everyone knew exactly who the former tenant in 3B was. When she got to the part about repeated parking violations leading to enforcement action, the room actually clapped. Then came the motion to update the building's parking policy. Every assigned space would now have a reflective plate with the tenant's unit number, tow authorization clearly marked, and an online reporting system for violations. Someone joked, "Can we name the new policy after the guy who started all this?" Dana deadpanned, "We're not calling it the Brent Clause." And that's how my revenge went from personal pettiness to official policy. 3 weeks later, I got an email from corporate legal. Small claims filing by former tenant, 3B. My heart dropped for a second, then I read on. Apparently, Brent had followed through on his threat and filed a small claims suit against me, the property management company, and John does 1 to 3. For emotional distress, financial hardship, and unlawful interference. His lawyer? A legal aid clinic. His evidence? The same blurry photos from before. Corporate legal attached the summary of their response. Zenotation spot lease agreement excerpts showing he was repeatedly warned. Zenotation spot email correspondence proving prior authorization on my end. Zenotation spot management's written testimony that his vehicle was towed after eviction notice due to continued noncompliance. And, cherry on top, screenshots of his Craigslist parking listings. Result: case dismissed with prejudice. Meaning, he couldn't file it again. Apparently, that audit uncovered more than just parking sublets. Brent had also failed to report income from his side hustle to his child support case. When the court reviewed his records during the mess he'd caused himself, they found discrepancies, leading to a modification hearing. He lost visitation until he could show 6 months of consistent compliance and transparency. You'd think that would be the tragic end. But there's more. Months later, around late summer, I was outside cleaning my car when a new tenant moved into 3B, a young mom with a toddler and a folding wagon full of Target bags. She waved politely and said, "Hey, you must be 2C. Dana said you were the reason I got this parking spot assigned right next to mine. You're like a legend here." I laughed awkwardly. A legend for parking? Apparently you took down some scammer who was renting spots illegally. Everyone talks about it in the group chat. I almost choked on my iced coffee. Turns out the new policy even gave tenants priority credits for reporting verified violations. They called it the Resident Accountability Initiative, but everyone else called it the 2C rule. I didn't ask for fame. I just wanted to park my car. About a month after the new neighbor moved in, I got a letter addressed to resident of 2C. Inside was a city subpoena. Apparently, Brent's fraud case had snowballed into a broader investigation of unauthorized parking sublets in multiple complexes managed by the same company. They wanted a witness statement confirming my original complaint and evidence. I sent them my file, every photo, timestamp, and the email thread that started with, "I'll move it later, boss." 2 weeks later, the city attorney's office sent me a thank you letter and a $150 citizen cooperation stipend. Yes, I literally got paid for being petty. 6 months after all this began, Dana held another community meeting to celebrate the end of the year. She gave out goofy resident appreciation certificates, stuff like laundry room hero and quietest dog owner. When she got to me, she smiled and said, "And finally, our unofficial parking enforcer, 2C, for services to the community, patience beyond reason, and reminding us all that the lease actually means something." The room cheered. Sam yelled, "Free number 27. Even the parrot guy in 3A whistled. I hung the certificate in my kitchen. Every morning now, I look out at my properly labeled parking spot, sip my coffee, and see the small metal plate gleaming in the sunlight. 27, 2C, tow authorized. And somewhere out there, Brent is probably telling his friends about the psycho neighbor who ruined his life. Meanwhile, I'm just here enjoying consequence-free groceries and a front-row spot to my own serenity. Hey everyone, Opie here. Didn't expect this story to turn into a 4-part parking saga, but apparently the internet loves a slow burn comeuppance. It's been about 8 months since my little act of pettiness snowballed into the great parking reformation of 2025. Since so many people asked for updates, and yes, I did end up posting this to our /petty revenge originally. It hit 50K upvotes before mods locked it for resolved. Here's what happened after the dust and tire marks settled. The new parking policy has worked shockingly well. Each stall now has a reflective steel plate with the unit number and tow enforced in block letters. We even have a building app where tenants can snap a photo if someone parks in their spot, and management gets an automatic timestamped report. Since the system launched, there's been exactly one violation, a delivery truck that stayed too long, and it got resolved in 10 minutes. The building actually feels cooperative now. People wave in the lot. The group chat turned from chaos into a meme-sharing haven. Even Dana seems happier and slightly less caffeine-dependent. She told me, half joking, "You're my favorite troublemaker." The new tenant in 3B, the single mom I mentioned in part 3, turned out to be awesome. Her name's Melissa, and her toddler, Toby, is basically the building mascot now. He toddles around with a toy dump truck and insists on helping people carry mail. She said when she moved in, Dana gave her a printout of the parking rules, signed and dated. "We had a bad experience last tenant," Dana told her. "Never again." Melissa laughed when I told her I was the reason. "So you're that guy," she said. "The parking avenger." I tried to deny it, but she's seen the certificate on my fridge. We've since become decent friends. She bakes cookies, I fix her Wi-Fi, and Toby thinks my Civic is the Batmobile. Remember the internal audit that started when corporate reviewed Brent's complaint? That turned into a full-scale review of every property the company managed. Turns out Brent wasn't the only one subletting parking passes. There was a whole network of resellers in 2 other complexes, using the same method, Craigslist ads, Venmo, cash. The audit uncovered over 40 unauthorized transactions. Corporate issued fines, rewrote lease clauses, and, get this, launched a new resident education campaign called Know Your Space. Guess who they asked to write the testimonial in the corporate newsletter? Yup, me. I had to condense my story into 300 words. The editor cut out my favorite line, "Justice is best served cold and parallel parked." But otherwise it ran with my name, unit number, and a cheesy headshot Dana snapped in front of number 27. The headline, "One tenant's patience helped us reclaim fair parking." Corporate sent me a $100 gift card for community contribution. I used it to buy a set of wheel locks, not for defense, just for irony. So about Brent. I hadn't heard anything for months, until one day in early fall when I ran into Sam, the nurse from 2B, again. She told me her friend at the courthouse mentioned Brent by name. Apparently his custody case reopened, and part of the record still included the incident where he failed to appear due to vehicle obstruction. The judge cited it as patterned irresponsibility. He didn't lose parental rights, just had visitation limited until he demonstrated stability, steady housing, employment, no legal complaints. And here's the kicker. The fraud investigation from the parking sublet case resulted in a municipal fine and probation, 6 months, plus repayment of the money he made. Nothing jail-worthy, but definitely humiliating. So yeah, the man who used to strut around calling me boss had to report to a probation officer because of a parking spot. When I posted the story, it went viral within a week. Apparently Reddit loves tiny, precise justice. Because my inbox looked like a traffic jam. Hundreds of DMs, half of them saying, "You're a hero." The other half asking if Dana was single. She's not, but she laughed way too hard at that part. Someone even turned my saga into a dramatic reading on YouTube, complete with fake Reddit voices and lo-fi background music. I didn't expect the amount of people who said it gave them courage to set boundaries in their own lives. One guy wrote, "I used to just take it when my roommate borrowed my stuff. Now I document everything like you." So, if nothing else, maybe my story made a few more people realize it's okay to stand your ground, politely, factually, and with the power of screenshots. At the end of the year, our complex hosted a small holiday get-together. Lights strung across the lot, hot chocolate station, bad Christmas playlist. Dana gave a short speech thanking everyone for a year of growth, learning, and, accountability. Then she said, "And special thanks to our resident of the year, 2C, the man who reminded us that rules exist for a reason." Everyone laughed and clapped. Someone handed me a tiny die-cast tow truck with my stall number written on the side. That thing now lives on my desk like a trophy. I know it sounds dramatic to say I learned something from a parking war, but honestly, I did. I learned that being petty isn't always about revenge. Sometimes it's about self-respect. It's about setting a line in chalk and saying, "You don't get to step over this just because you think you can." And when someone does cross it, you don't have to yell or fight. You just have to document, stay calm, and let the universe, and occasionally the HOA, do the rest. Also, apparently if you're too organized, corporate will ask you to write internal newsletters. So maybe that's karma too. It's been over a year now. The parking spot's still mine. The lot is peaceful. Every once in a while, when I pull in and see that shiny metal plate, number 27, 2C, tow authorized, I remember how one morning of pettiness turned into a ripple effect that changed our entire building. I don't regret a thing. Okay, maybe one thing. I wish I'd kept a dash cam that day. The expression on his face when the tow truck hooked his car, that was the moment petty became poetry.